Welcome back to Watercolor Workshop with James Freed. This is part 2 of the basic color mixing demo. And in part 1 we completed this beautiful color wheel mixing all of these colors from these 7 colors. We haven't even used the raw number yet. But just using these 7 colors, 3 blues, 2 reds, and 2 yellows to create the entire spectrum of the color wheel here. And what we're going to be doing next is using each color and its complement, or the color directly across the color wheel from it, to create complementary mixes that will give us some really beautiful neutralized colors. So grays and browns and different tones of all of those two mixtures all the way across the color wheel. So that's what's in store for us next. So what you'll need to do is make sure that you've still got your mixtures that you made to create each of these colors from the 7 colors that we used. So if you need to mix up more paint, now would be a good time to do that. Go ahead and make sure that you've got all of the colors mixed up that we used on the color wheel ready to go, because that's what we're going to be using. Next, I'm going to take this away. I'd like you to lay out another piece of watercolor paper, and this time we're going to give ourselves some vertical bars here. I just used a ruler, metal ruler here, and just the width of the ruler, and I scribed lines down to kind of fill the page. And I have 6 columns that I drew with these, and then I just broke them up into a top row here, or a top row here for the colors that are going along the warm side of the color wheel, and the bottom row here for the colors that are going along the blue side of the color wheel. And I labeled them. So the complements are going to be red and green. So our primary red, which is quinacridone red, and the green that we mixed up. Then red orange that we mixed up, which is that color there. And the blue green that we mixed up, which is that color there. And the orange that we mixed, the secondary orange, that beautiful pumpkin color that we mixed up earlier. And then our primary blue, which is just our ultramarine blue directly from our palette. Then the yellow orange, that color there. And the blue violet, which is that color there. And the yellow, which is our primary yellow, which is Winsor yellow from our palette. And the violet that we mixed up, which is that color there. And then yellow green and red violet, which is that one there. So the first thing we're going to do is just fill in these swatches with each of these colors labeled. The next thing that we're going to do is starting with the lighter of the 2 colors, we will add the lightest color into a well, and then add the darker color to it, gradually to it. So one little brush tip full, and then we'll paint in a swatch, and another little brush tip full, and we'll paint in a swatch, and so on until we have these 4 swatches filled up with the different complementary mixes that you can get from these 2 colors. And we will do that for all 6 of these companion colors. And that'll show you how much of a range that we have that is available to us for, using these complementary neutral mixes. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to use a flat brush again, just like I did earlier. So I'll have 2, one for my warms and one for my cools, 2 separate brushes. You can use whichever brushes you have. I've got my 2 rinse water containers set up here, my yogurt tubs with clean water ready to go. Whenever these start to get muddy looking or dirty, go ahead and switch those out. So again, I highly recommend getting these mixes, these color wheel colors all mixed up and have them ready to go, so that way you don't have to keep mixing the base colors for these. So you should still have had some left over in your wells, and you can always mix in more if you need to. When you apply watercolor, it's good to go ahead and really get a nice amount on there, because it does soak into the paper a little bit, and the value will change a little bit as it dries. So when you're floating a wash in here like this, I've loaded up my brush really well, so the area is really wet. And that will make sure that you get a good amount of color on there and it's even. All right, so blue-green. So doing this exercise really will help you understand how these colors work together and how you can combine them to get the really subtle color changes and the beautiful neutrals that we see in nature. So once you've been painting for a little while, you should be able to mix up these colors, your color wheel colors, very easily. I would encourage you to memorize these mixes and then just practice. See how close you can get to nailing it first time you go, in terms of mixing up small amounts in your watercolor palette, taking the paint directly from the palette, mixing up small amounts to get those color wheel colors in here, and or mixing them in trays like this to get them to be bigger amounts. All right, and I'm going to hit this with the hairdryer to get this to dry a little bit. Those are mostly dry there, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to start with my red-green mixture here. So the idea is that you want to make a new palette well inside of your little mixing trays for each one of these mixtures, and start off with the lighter color of the two. Now when I'm looking at the red and the green is the value of the red and the green are really close, but the red is a little bit darker. So I'm going to start off with the lighter color here, the green, and I'm going to pull some out of my little tray. So go ahead and take some green from the green mixture and put it in a new well here, and get quite a bit. You want to leave some here in case you need to mix it again so you can get it really close. But I'm going to start off with about that much. And rinse your brush really well. And dip it into, we're going to go right for the quinacridone red, so I'm going to mix up a little bit more of quinacridone red up here. This is just straight out of the palette. And I'm going to add just a little bit of quinacridone red. Just tip the little bit of my brush into the quinacridone red and put it into the green here. And we'll get that mixture going. And immediately, even with just that little bit, it turns it kind of into a neutralized brown. So I'm going to put that color right here as the green with just a little bit of the red in it. It's very close to an umber, but a little more neutralized. Umber is just a little warmer, so we hardly have any red in there at all. So there's my first swatch. Then I'm going to put a little bit more red. And when you're painting these wet into wet, just be careful. You might want to leave a little bit of white space between these unless you want them to run together, which could look cool, but I'm going to kind of leave some space between them so there's good demarcation between these color swatches. It's kind of a pretty color, very neutralized brown. Then we'll take some more red and mix it into that same well that we've been mixing in. So we're just adding this red into that same mixture as we go, so it's just getting redder and redder as we go. Started off as full-on green, and we're just adding red. And this is where you really learn how color works when you're mixing up these complementary mixes. It's a good first start. And understand too that you can also lighten these colors by adding water. So as you add water, it tints them or makes them lighter. And as they lighten, the constituent colors sometimes react a little differently as they get lighter and lighter, and you can get slightly different variations of those same colors. So it's actually quite fun to play around with this by doing tints. And then tones, you could add a darker base color like the Payne's Gray or the Indanthrene Blue, adding a little bit of that. That can darken these down and create even more ranges of color. So this is just the first step. So I've added quite a bit more red now to this mix. All right, that one's pretty close to this one, so I'm going to add even some more red just to make it look really a little bit different. Just take some more red straight out of the palette and add it to this. There we go. And you can see how the green, even just a little bit of green that's left in this mixture here, really tempers the chroma of the red. It really desaturates it a little bit and neutralizes it a little bit. So both of those things are happening in terms of it getting a little bit darker and less saturation of red. That's a really nice range of colors there. Next, we're going to do the blue, green, and red, orange. So the lighter color of these two is definitely the red, orange. So I'll start with the red, orange, and I'll just put it in a well next to it. And I'm going to take just a little bit of the blue, green. I'm going to make sure the blue, green's mixed up really well. There we go. Just a little tiny bit of the blue, green. Just a brush tip full, and put it in the red. And this time, since I'm starting with the red, I'll work down because this was the color that I started with. And a little bit more blue-green. And a little bit more blue-green. This is kind of going towards violet now in terms of being kind of grayed out. And even more blue-green. This would be a beautiful tinted out gray. It's gotten really cool, gone from warm to cool. Very rich mixture. Sweet. All right, time to switch the rinse water out again. It's getting kind of purple. When I'm doing these color mixing demos, I switch the water out way more often than I actually do when I'm just painting, because I tend to work from the light colors to the dark colors, so the water doesn't get as mucky as quickly as it does when I'm doing these specific mixes. So just a word about that. Now I'm going to do the orange to blue. So our blue is our straight up ultramarine and our orange is our mixture that we had before. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of the orange and put it in its own little bit here. Again, we're starting with the lighter colors, so I have quite a bit of orange here to work with. Clean my brush off. And I'm just going to put in just the slightest amount of blue. So I'm going to make sure that my ultramarine is mixed up with the water really well, because it is a very granular color and it tends to settle down to the bottom of the well. I have another brush that I keep for mixing the colors. And I'm going to dip, I was getting a little too exuberant there. That would be way too much blue to start. So just a little blue should do. This will just take down the chroma of the paint color a little tiny bit, and you'll see that kind of grays it down. So it still retains its orange look, but it's definitely darker and a little cooler. And then a little bit more. Just another quick dip of the brush in. Just take it down another, maybe a couple dips of the brush. There we go. You want to do enough, adding enough at each step that it gets, noticeably different. If you start painting another swatch, the next swatch, and it doesn't look noticeably different, go ahead and you can add a little bit more of that darker color in it till it starts to look different. That's pretty close, so I'm going to add a little bit more paint. Whoa, that went very different, so we'll see how that goes. Oh, that's good enough. What was on there, it'll just mix. This is one of my go-to complementary mixes, especially when I'm painting in oil or in gouache, but even in watercolor. It just gives you some really beautiful colors, and they change as you tint them out. Maybe we'll pull some tints of these once these are dry here and show you what I'm talking about. All right, there's that next step, so I'm going to add some more blue. This becomes really nice kind of steely grays, or actually warmer grays, greenish grays. And then these will give you some nice steely looking grays, like storm cloud gray. And I actually keep these charts in my studio when I'm working, especially on larger paintings, and when I want to mix up a specific color, and I can't remember what the hell I did. When I was in the field, if I was doing a field painting, I want to come in and make a larger studio painting based on that field study. I can have this chart up on the wall, and I can go, okay, yeah, it looks like it's in this range or in that range, and I'll know what to mix it with to get that color again. So it's super helpful to keep these around. And I'm going to go ahead and add in a lot more blue. But you never would have thought there was orange in this mixture, just looking at it. It has a kind of a greenish brown gray, greenish brown gray. But these are definitely indicative of the colors you see in nature. And very rarely are we going to see these, prismatic colors. I mean, you will. But more often you're going to see these neutralized colors in nature, so that's why we're learning how to mix these. And learning how to use these colors in combination will help you keep a unified palette, so that the paintings that result from using these colors together will have a harmony, a built-in harmony, because they're all mixed from very few colors, from just those. Actually, we only used 7 of the 8 so far for mixing. Look at that, so pretty. All right, yellow orange. I'm going to switch back to my warmer paintbrush, and I'm going to start with my yellow orange and move that over into another well here. Get a bunch of that going. You can see how handy these little mixing trays are for mixing up larger volumes of paint. And I'm going to put the blue-violet into the yellow-orange, and it happens to be right next to it, next door here, so that's really helpful. Again, I'm going to mix up my blue-violet because those constituent colors are a little bit granular, so they sink to the bottom, so it's good to give that a good swirl. And I'm just going to put this tiniest little bit of blue-violet on the end of my brush here and put that into the yellow orange, and it immediately gives me kind of a greenish color, which admittedly does not look so great in the paint well here, but we will put it on the paper and it'll be a little different. So nice neutralized green, light neutralized green. Kind of brassy. This would also tint out beautifully if we added more water to this. All right, there's the first pass. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit it with another brush tip full. I had to go in and just use the blue-violet mixture here. I think for the last dark one I'm going to have to mix up some more blue-violet. That's okay, we know how to do that now. So kind of a brassy yellow. Oops. I'm going to splash some paint onto my yellow swatch. That's not good. Let's get rid of that. Look at that. I love these little sponges. They're so helpful. When you make a mistake and need to clean something up. It's like having a little paint eraser. And that's what that blue-violet looks like with just a tiny bit of yellow-orange in it. Get that fully saturated there. All right. Now we're going to go yellow with regular violet. I've got lots of that mixed up, so I'm going to go ahead and give myself another mixing tray full of the Winsor yellow that we're going to add the violet into. Just reaching for my main palette again. Add some of the Winsor yellow to an empty mixing tray. Well, a little pro tip: when you are filling your wells in your palette, in your portable palette, don't fill them all the way up. Fill them only about maybe 2/3. That'll leave you a little room for water to mix them with. So before you put this away, you want to let it dry, then fold it closed, and then you can store it. If you store it wet, the colors are going to leak into each other, and it's going to just be a real mess. So make sure the colors are dry before you put it away. And don't overfill them. You can always put more in when you need it. And this is plenty to go out for. This would be plenty to go out for, you know, a couple of days of painting, a couple of 2 or 3 days of painting. That's plenty of paint. All right, so yellow and violet. I've got plenty of just Winsor yellow straight up here. And to that, I'm going to add just a little brush tip of violet to start with. And you want just a small amount. Again, I'm going to remix my violet because it does separate rather quickly. There we go. I keep getting paint all over here. So short dip of paint into the brush into the purple or violet. I'm going to bleed some of it off, and I'm going to go right into the yellow. Nope, I didn't quite get enough in there. I'm going to get a little bit more. That might be too much. There we go. Just the slightest amount to start with. And see how different that looks. Now I'm going to put a little bit more. That's enough of a change for the first one. And again, yours may look a little different from mine depending upon how much paint you put in at first. But it should be close, and you should get the idea that, you know, adding these complements in just changes the value, changes the chroma. You could also do these in, finer steps. Instead of having 4 steps, you could do 6 steps or 8 steps and get some of the in-between mixes. But I felt for this would be plenty. Kind of get you the idea of what we're doing here. You can kind of imagine an in-between color between these two. That's what it would be. All right, more with the purple, more with the violet. It's kind of a mustardy golden brown here. And now we're just going to go for it with the purple. See how dark we can get that. Look at these colors as they dry, how beautiful those ranges are. And how much more natural looking they are. You can imagine seeing those colors in nature. Lovely. All right, our last mixture is going to be yellow, green, and red, violet. I think I have enough mixed up for that, so I'm going to go ahead and just go right into that. So my red, violet, I'm going to add to my yellow, green. It's a really nice range of colors there. Just saturate that up here. And definitely let these dry before you move them around. I've got a lot of water and a lot of paint on this sheet here, so I'm not going to move it. I am going to try tinting out some of these colors a little bit with water just to show you how beautiful they look when you just add some water to them. This is the one that we just did. I'm going to do it next to the darkest one because that's the mixture I ended up with. And so I'll just add water and show you what the lighter version of that would look like. Actually, I'm going to use a smaller brush so you can see that better without blending into something else. So I'll add a lot of water and really tint these out. This is where watercolors really shine because they hold their ability to create a color even if it's really diluted. So here's a tint of that color. So just water added to it and that's it. It's a beautiful light gray. That's pretty. And the blue-orange mixture. And the red-green mixture. So as you went along making each of these mixtures, if you added water to them to tint them, you can imagine getting tinted versions of all of these. I didn't do that because that would have just taken a long time and not really made for much video fun watching. All right, so that is how you create your complementary neutral mixes using our color wheel colors. So I recommend that you go out and practice mixing these colors and paint, and before we have the workshop, maybe spend some time creating combinations of these and see what that gives you. All right, see you next time.